Hello everybody, it's Judy here from Coffee, Cookies, and Books, and what I'm going to talk to you about today is everything that I read in January. I've got a great group of books to review for you, so I'd really love it if you would stick around. I'd also much appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel. It's huge help in getting me to that first milestone of 500 subscribers. So with all that in mind, I will see you on the other side. Hello. Okay, so we're just going to get right into it because if you've watched any of my videos, you know I really like to talk. Probably a little bit too much, but this is reviews, so they'll be a little lengthier than usual. So just to quickly go over, I read 12 books in January, which really surprised me that I got through that many because 8 of them were in print and 4 of them were digital. So I read quite a lot of print books. One of the books that I am going to mention to you is not part of the 12. I did read it in December, but it relates to one of the books that I am going to review. So I do want to just quickly mention it. I did review it in my December wrap-up, so I'll leave that linked below, and you can always look at that. Plus, you can check out my review on Goodreads for it. It's just a novella, so it's very short. There were 2 of the books that I'm going to review that were initially on Kindle Unlimited, and I had chosen those to read on Kindle. And I decided with both of them that I wanted to read them physically, and I'm actually really glad that I did with Quicksilver, which you'll hear about in my review, why I think that was such a great choice. So I just wanted to mention that because initially they were supposed to be in digital format. So they're actually physical books now that I'm going to review with you. And I did want to mention that some of the reviews might have a little bit of spoilers. Particularly Quicksilver is going to for sure have some spoilers. Now I try not to be too much and give away too much, but in some cases, it's very hard to do that. So, you know, when we get to Quicksilver's towards the end, it was actually, I think, the last book of the entire group of reviews. So when we get there, you'll know. Now, what I thought I'd do is start with just a little bit of the stats. Now, these stats do include the novella that I read in January in December, because I was supposed to read it in January. But I was a little ahead, so I decided to just get that one done. But it is in my stats for January. So it says 13 books read. I read 4,478 pages, which I think is really great. Now, out of that, my average star rating was 3.27. I had 1 5-star, 2 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 1 3-star, 3 2-stars, and 1 DNF. Okay, so not bad really. Again, so 9 physical books if we include the novella, and 4 ebooks. Then 1 was young adult, and the rest were all adult books. Then it breaks it down by the types. So it says 2 thrillers, 2 epic fantasy, 1 mystery, 1 romance, 2 sci-fi, 1 fantasy. So that is like, I would say that that's not epic fantasy, and I'll explain the difference when I'm reviewing them. This was just a regular fantasy with no romance involved. And then 2 fantasy romance, 1 cozy mystery, 1 paranormal. So those were the kinds of books that I read. And then, so for this review, what I've decided that I'm going to do is I am not going to give you my star ratings on these books. I am just going to give you my impressions of the books. So I think that if you want to read my star ratings, my Goodreads is linked below. You can go on my Goodreads. I've got my full reviews will be there. In the case of Quicksilver, I'm actually going to read you my review because it is going to be really relevant to the conversation I'm going to have to you about how I felt about that particular book. The rest of them, I'm just going to kind of give you the general feel, and I think you can pretty much gather from that which books didn't resonate with me. And then also, I think what I'm going to do is at the very end, I will pick whichever ones I felt were really my favorites of the month. And that might not even necessarily be a 5-star. That might be, you know, a 4.5 or even sometimes a 3, because it might have entertained me, but maybe it wasn't the best written book out of the group. But that's what I'm going to do. So I thought what we would do is we would start with just a quick overview of The Fall by Ryan Cahill. Now, this is a novella. I think it was 86 pages, and it goes over, hold on, I do have everything written down here just so that I can quickly review it. It is a build of what happens hundreds of years before where the actual series starts. So that will be one of the first books that I am going to review because I did read it. And this is the fall of the Order. And the Order was sort of like the overall section that controlled the land, so to speak. This is not an urban fantasy, and it is very, it is political to a certain point, I think. But what happens is it involves a dragon guard, and there are elves and witches and that kind of thing. So it's all very, a lot of magic is in the kingdom. And this is 86 pages packed full of action, but it builds perfectly so that when you go into the first book, you have a true appreciation for where that book is, even though this is hundreds of years before. So I was really, really gripped by this book and super excited to get into the first book, which I am going to review with you. So I just wanted to mention that. I would say that if you have an interest in starting the Bound and the Broken series, you do not skip this book. This book is essential. You really do have to read it, because when you get into the first book, you'll be lost, because there are several things that they refer to in the first book that are it's caused by this, okay, by what happens in this. So I do not skip this. Whatever you do, don't skip it. Now, I think you can get the novella on Kindle Unlimited. So like if you wanted to buy, because I wouldn't suggest reading the actual full novel on Kindle Unlimited. I would say if you like, I don't know if it's available on audio, but I think it is. I would, because he is a self-published author. But if it is, great. But if not, I would read it, because I find that in digital you miss a lot. But this is just a novella, so you could easily read it in Kindle Unlimited and probably get what you need out of it, and have it there as a reference if you want to refer back to it. But I bought the novella, and I don't regret having the novella, because I went back to the novella to check a couple of things while I was reading through the book. Anyway, so just wanted to mention that one. Okay, so the next one, and I have all of these journaled because I forget the details. I read 12 books. It's like they can all mash together. You know, at my age, it's like I need to take notes. All right, so first one in the series that we're going to review is Bones to Ashes by Kathy Reichs. Now, this is the 10th book in her series, and it follows, as usual, Temperance Brennan. In the series, she works out of 2 locations. South Carolina is one, and Montreal, Quebec is the other one. So in this particular case, she's working from Montreal. Okay, so it's a good book. I would say that you know, I've read enough of her books now, 10 of them, that I find some of them are just meatier than other ones. Some of them, the pace is a little slower, and some of them, the pace is just like one thing after another. Like the one I read before this one, I loved it, absolutely loved it. Probably one of my favorites that I've read so far, outside of the very first one, which was fantastic. So this one kind of sat more in the middle of the road with me. Now, I felt like it was, it had the usual. So it had Andrew Ryan, who is basically her on again, off again love interest. And in this particular case, it was off again. And, you know, there was the angst between them and a lot of stress between them. Now, the one thing that I particularly like is that the characters in this book, they are older. They have, like, she has a daughter, she's divorced. He's never been married, but he has a daughter. So, you know, these are, and we're not talking young. Her daughter is in university. So, you know, she's like early 20s, I think Katie is. That's what her daughter's name is. So, you know, there's the dynamic of them being a little bit older. They've lived a little longer, and they both have their faults, and there is a lot of tension between the two of them. So that was really prevalent in this book, and I really like that because she carries it through the whole series. So this would be like I think I've mentioned before, it's the one instance with her books where you wouldn't want to read them out of order. You'd want to keep them in order and read them in order, just simply because of the relationship development, and that was quite a bit in here. Now, I found this book a little on the slow side. It started off with about 5 chapters, I think it was, of background of her as a child growing up. And that was kind of background that led into the essential elements of the story, which was a missing childhood friend. And what I didn't like about this was that it felt like it was almost more of a personal journey for her, as opposed to a crime novel. Even though there was a crime involved, and there was some of her forensic anthropology involved in it, it just felt a little bit lacking in that thrilling aspect that you find in a lot of her other books. So that was what I felt lacked in this. Now, my last name is Cormier, and my family is from the New Brunswick area. My father is Acadian French, which is also very similar to the French that are in the New Orleans, settled down in that area. And my dad particularly is from Moncton, New Brunswick. And part of this story had a lot of history from that area of New Brunswick. So I found that extremely interesting. Obviously, I would. I know some of my family history, but I don't know that much of it. And I have a huge, massive family. And there were other names that were mentioned in here that are all part of my family, like LeBlanc and Bastrache, which are all part of my family names. I recognize all of them. And so I just found it extremely interesting. It also talked about the history of leprosy that was in the eastern part of Canada. Maybe we're talking 100 years back or more, actually, now thinking about it, because we're in 2025. So that part of it really, really interests me. I did find that the end of the book wrapped up kind of really fast, but the very end of it was very touching, and a little bit heart-wrenching, but satisfying. So overall, I liked the book. I didn't love it as much as some of the other ones. It had a very different feel to it than the other books did, but I would still recommend it as a continuation of her series. So I do have book 11, which is the next one, is on my must-reads for 2025. So it will be coming up at some point this year, and I'll be able to share that one with you when it comes. So that was Bones to Ashes by Kathy Reichs. Okay, so now we are going to move on to Planetside by Michael Mammay. Now that one was a ebook on Kindle Unlimited, and I'll put the cover up so that you can take a look at it. It was, this is the first book. I think it's a 4-book series, if I'm not mistaken. And it wasn't super long. It was only like, it's Kindle Unlimited, but it rates at 265 pages. Okay. And it is a military sci-fi. So it had a lot of military elements to it. It almost had a little bit too much of it for me. Okay. I like military elements. Like, as I've said previously, I thoroughly enjoyed Leviathan Wakes. But what Leviathan Wakes did was it split. So it had a bit of military with a lot, like there was still a lot of character and personal development, like very different. This was 100% military. However, it does follow Colonel Carl Butler, and he's a retired colonel, and I think he retired with, and I never really quite understood what happened, but it's like he retired on a bad note, so to speak. And he is asked by a general that he's friends with to go and investigate the missing son of a VIP. And so he is sent to this outer system that they are at war with, called Kappa. And I think if I recall, they've been at war like 4 years, something along those lines. So he has to navigate all of the politics that are involved in why this kid is missing. It's a kid, young man. Why this young man is missing. He was a soldier down on the planet, and he went. There was an attack. He was injured, and they put him in an evac to take him up to the space station to be patched up, and he never arrived. So he's trying to break down all of this, and in the end, so this is a little spoilery, just a bit. In the end, he figures out why he's been sent to this planet, which was because he's essentially deemed disposable. So they think he's not going to make it through this, and it's kind of sad, really, how it ends up, and where he ends up, and the steps he has to take are really, really sad. And in the way the book, like the final part of the book, his life has imploded, and it kind of ends there. And the rest of the books, they follow him, but it's a different investigation in each one. So like what's happened there is done, it ends it, but he ends on a bad note, And I mean, like I put this at the same place as Bones to Ashes, so they were entertaining and I loved it. But what I felt was wrong with this one was more personal taste, okay, and more the military drama behind it. But the impression that I get on what happens in the next books, because I've read the synopses of the books that are following, is that they seem to be more of a personal journey for him. And I really am interested in following the next books, so I probably will do so at some point. I don't have them particularly on my TBR. I don't have them at a point where, you know, I'm going to buy them or I have to have them right now, but there is the good chance that I will. I may very well just buy them in ebook form. I got this one on Kindle Unlimited, but the next ones are not. But I may very well buy them in electronic form, because I was fine reading this that way. It was such a short book. It was okay, and I don't think I really need the physical book, but we'll see. I mean, sometimes, you know, when Amazon has its really great sales, you can pick up these books easily for a great price. I have looked to see if it's just by any weird chance they were available on Book Outlet, and they are not. So, which is unfortunate, because I would really like to buy the physical book if I could. But so that's where I am with it. And of course, my review on Goodreads is a little bit more extensive. So if you want to go on there and read that, you can. And you can, of course, see my star rating on there. Okay, so the next one we're going to review is Blindsighted by Karin Slaughter. It's a thriller. And it is a, what I would call it, pretty gruesome thriller. But I loved it. I thought it was great. And it follows Sarah Linton. Now, she is the, I put down the, she's a pediatrician, but she is also the part-time county coroner. And her husband, her ex-husband, is the chief of police. Tension? Can anybody say tension? So that was the one thing that I found extremely interesting. I found the two characters, because they're the two main characters, they were really great. Now, the book had multiple points of view. It had her and Jeffrey, who is the chief of police, and also Lena. And Lena is the sister of the first victim. Okay, so, but she's a police officer who works under Jeffrey Tolliver, who is Sarah's ex-husband. So it obviously it's a very complicated plot. So I liked all of the characters. I liked Sarah's characters. I liked Jeffrey's character. I even liked Lena, who was very tough to like. Now, it's Lena's twin sister who dies at the beginning of the thing. And it's really, really hard for her because she is an officer. So technically she's not supposed to really get involved in the investigation, but they have a limited police force. So as the fact that she is a detective, she has to get involved. And throughout the whole story, I find that it was a bit predictable. Like, the one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit was, and which was probably the reason that it really wasn't like one of the best books I read, was about halfway through, and they start talking about their findings, obviously, because it's a police investigation, and a drug that was used, and the kind of drug it was, and how it would be cultivated and everything. And it was like, oh, I know who did it. It was like, you know, light bulb went off and I was like, yeah, okay, I know who did it. And I was right. It was exactly who I thought it was. Now, I loved the way the story progressed. Lena's sister was not the only victim. There were multiple victims. So it was not a one-off. And it was all related. It did all relate back to Sarah. Now, where I had issues with the book had to do with Sarah and Jeffrey's relationship. So Sarah was married to him, I think it was 2 years, could have been 3, something like that. And there were things that happened in Sarah's past that were not nice. And she never told him. And he never figured it out or guessed it. I mean, I found it really bizarre, okay, that they had that kind of relationship. They were married and she never told him. And I mean, he was devastated when he found out, because she did eventually have to tell him, obviously, through the investigation and everything. And he took it really hard. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what the hell? And then, like, there were things her actions in it pissed me off at certain times, because I was like, you know what? A normal person would not do that. So it was all very dramatic and very overwritten, I guess is the best way of putting it. But of course, it was all for the book, and it was all for because of what happens in the book. So this is the Grant. The Grant County. It's a Grant County thriller. So it is actually a sequence, and the next one is called Kiss Cut. And I am getting that one. I bought the Amazon one, and the Amazon one is one of those little tiny pocket books that, like, you can't even hardly open it to read it. I really hate it. This one I got off of Blackwell's. So, and on Blackwell's, they have them all this size. So I think I'll be getting the collection of books off of Blackwell's, because this was like super easy to read, and I like the size and format of it. So I just wanted to mention that. Actually, hang on. So this is the Kiss Cut one. So as you can see, if you look at them, how, like, it's almost the same height, almost, okay? But look at, why would you make a book that, like, you can't even hardly hold this thing? Oh, like, I really hate these. I hate this format. It's like I cannot read this format. I mean, it was pretty inexpensive. I think $12.99 is what I paid. Yeah, $12.99. But I can't read this. So I prefer this. I prefer this floppier. It's much easier to read. It's one of the reasons that I love paperbacks so much. So I just thought I'd mention that, because if you're the kind of person who prefers paperback, prefers a physical book and a paperback, this is much, much, much better. And Blackwell's is where I got them. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to one of my favorite books of the month so far. It's a romance. It's a romantic suspense, and it is Chasing Fortune. It is number 8 in the Stealth Ops series that I've been reading by Brittney Sahin. And I have read her entire Falcon Paul series, which I'm mentioning that for a reason in a second. And this one I had read initially the first 5 books in this series, and then I went back this year and I reread those 5, and then I'm finishing off. And the second 5 is the second team of Scott & Scott Security Stealth Ops. So this is Echo Team, and the member is Chris Hunter, so he's, you know, one of the guys, and it follows the female main character is Rory McAdams, and Rory McAdams is the sister of Jessie McAdams from Falcon Falls. So the reason I went back and reread all of the Stealth Thoughts, read the first 5 and started reading these, is because I read Falcon Falls, and it's like a collection, I think, of 8 or 9 books, and these people are all mentioned in there, and Jesse has his own book in the Falcon Falls series that I have, and it's aggravating me because I'm reading about these people and I haven't read their books. And in the Falcon Falls series, Rory and her husband Chris, this book, are mentioned in there. So I knew I had to rate. So far, it's been Wyatt, who was also heavily mentioned in Falcon Falls, was book 6, and book 7 was AJ, and AJ is Ella's sister, who's married to Rory's brother Jesse. So it's like everybody is all related, so they're all relating back to it. So I absolutely had to read them all. So yeah, love that. Now in this particular case, this follows, like I said, it's Rory and Chris, and there's a dog involved, and he's a Belgian Malinois, and his name is Bear, which I love. I love that name for a dog. Yeah, Malinois. I can never pronounce it right. I did actually write it down in my synopsis here. And then in this particular book, Carter Dominic makes an intro into this, and Carter is mentioned right at the beginning of the book, so it's like first chapter, and you know something's going to build, because Carter is the head of Falcon Falls, but initially he was kind of like, everybody thought he was a bad guy. Not really, but everybody thought he was a bad guy. And he basically catches Rory doing something she shouldn't have been doing. So anyway, she isn't really, but that's how it sort of appears. And then this book also covers something that happened to Carter that was in his book about his murdered wife. And because I read those first and I hadn't read this, I was like, what the hell happened with his wife? Like, you kind of sit there and you're thinking, what happened with his wife? Well, it's all answered in this book. And, it was pretty sad a little bit for him, but good in that he got some closure about why his wife died. But the interesting thing was his wife knew Rory, and how it all came together. I mean, like, wow. Like the way that Brittney writes her books, and how she manages to interweave these plots and these people, and I'm never confused. Like, never. It's like totally incredible. And then, of course, on top of all of that, I have characters also coming in to help out that are Amelia, Sebastian, and Sean. And Amelia, Sebastian, and Sean are from the one of her other series. I forget what the hell series it is, but it's one of the other series at the beginning. Oh, the Dublin Nights series. So, and that is one of her first series at the beginning. So these people are also show up in this book, which I love that she does that with her books. So, it was a really, really great read. It was a little on the long side, 465 pages, but I did not find it boring. I mean, that's usually the one thing with her books, is that I'm never bored. And some of her books are longer. they are longer than 400 pages. And typically, you know, a lot of people don't like to read a romance longer than 400 pages, but never boring. Not a single moment of this book was boring. So, anyways, now, the only thing that bothered me, a tiny little bit, it's just like a little thing, and this is a bit spoilery, and I did write it here in the review, okay, and that was that there's a certain point where they're going in to get the bad guys, and Rory is like, I'm gonna go, she's got to be there, of course she's got to be there, and I can't even describe this. I freaking knew what was going to happen. I was like, when it happened, I winced a bit, right? Because it's like, seriously, did it have to happen like that? Did it just have to happen exactly how I thought it was going to go down, and it was going to happen? Yeah, it did. So that was the only thing. It was like just that minor little thing, tiny, but it bothered me a bit. So, anyways, yeah. So that's it. I know that there were certain parts of the book. I made a note here where I said things were hard for Rory, and they were because there were relationships that she had with people in her past that it came to light that they did not have her best interests at heart. And that was really hard for her because she had to come to terms with that and come to terms with it quickly, unfortunately. So, you know, there was a little bit of sad parts in this, and, you know, how it all transpired. But, you know, good guys win in the end. And the story must go on. So that was number 8 and third member of Echo Team. And the last two, Stealth Ops 9 and Stealth Ops 10 are on my must-reads list. So you'll be seeing those last two guys. I think the next one is Roman, and the final one is Finn. And those are the last two guys. So, yeah, can't wait to read them. Okay. All right, so let's get on to the next one. The next one is an ebook, and I'm going to put it up here, Antiques, Artifacts, and Alibis by Sally Bayless. So it is Numberwood in the Dogwood Springs Cozy Mystery Series. And I thought this was an adorable book. Like, it just was a sweet story. It was a quick and enjoyable read. It's one of those ones that you just read it, and before you know it, the story's finished. Super easy. It was 210 pages, so not a long book. Your main character is Libby. Now, Libby is divorced, and she lost her job because of her awful ex-husband and new fiance or whatever. So she moves to the town near where her parents are, and she gets a job at a museum in this town. So when she gets to her new place, she's got, you know, an apartment and everything. I think it's in like a duplex, and this dog keeps showing up, and the dog's name is Bella. It's a golden retriever, and I guess Bella had belonged to the fellow who lived in the apartment that she was in, and he had passed away, and his daughter had Bella, but Bella kept getting out and going back to the apartment. It was really sweet. And so Libby ends up seeing if she can keep Bella. You know, it's like on a trial basis. Anyway, so Bella becomes her sidekick, I guess you could call it that. And so on her first day on the job, she walks into her office. This is all, I think, in the synopsis, if I'm not mistaken, and finds a dead body. And the dead body is Vivian, who is the person she's replacing. So clearly, obviously she didn't kill him, but every single other person is a suspect. And it is just a lot of fun, okay? And so there's Libby and Bella, and then there is Cleo, who's her upstairs neighbor, and there is Imani, who she works with, and Dwight's another one she works with, Pete, and then Terry. So there's like this group of people, and then she ends up being friends with another group that like sort of is with Cleo, and introduces her to other people. And there's one guy, I can't remember the guy she meets, who is he's a teacher at the university, a tech teacher, but he actually owned a tech company and he sold it, and he's just teaching just because he loves it. And they have kind of a tiny little romance going on. And then there's a younger young kid. He's 17, I think, but he's kind of a techie guy, and he helps her with some things with it. So it's just really just a bunch of nice people who just kind of come together and end up figuring out who the killer is. So, all in all, it was a fun mystery to read. Now, I have already I've loaded in the second book of the series into my Kindle Unlimited. It took the place of a couple of books that I removed from there, so it'll eventually get chosen, and I would think probably at some point this year I might end up reading the second one in the series. Totally want to read the next one. I enjoyed it enough that I would totally do that. Sometimes you just need a break from everything else that you're reading that's deep, and you have to spend time with things that are complicated, and this was very uncomplicated, so I recommend it for that reason. And anybody who likes cozy mysteries, I'm pretty sure you would really like this one, because it was a lot of fun. Okay, so then just really quick, the next one I read was Librarian's Vampire Assistant, and I put it up here. I DNF'd this, okay? I'm not sure how many pages. I think I was about 25% in. I read quite a bit because it's a 1 to 3 book combo. It was only 446 pages with the 3 books. So it's kind of like a serialized series. I think each one is about 150 pages, and I hated it. It was not for me. Didn't like how it was written. Didn't enjoy the story. So I just didn't continue it. I didn't even review it. I just gave it a DNF. Okay. All right. So then the next one is the Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. And this was sci-fi that I had a lot of hopes that it was going to be pretty good, 156 pages, and I loved the premise of it. Unfortunately, it disappointed me. Now, I'm going to read what I said right at the end, okay? Because this is really how I feel about this book, and this is what I said in the review right at the very end. It could have been so fantastic, but alas, it wasn't. This book suffered from being too short. If the story had been a full-length novel with the characters fleshed out, especially Jacqueline, who was the main character in the book, it could have been epic. it just wasn't possible in 160 pages. It was just a rewrite of the Alien saga, right down to an android that nobody trusted. It was a damn shame. And that's really how I felt about the book. It was like it had so many elements of it that were identical to Aliens, but just enough to give it a little bit of a different story, that if it had been fleshed out more, like if there had been more information about their journey, because they were on a what you would call century ship. So like Jacqueline, who was the head of it, she grew up on the ship. I mean, she was born and raised on the ship. And just, it felt like, it didn't feel like that. I don't even know how to describe it. I just kind of felt that, you know, they're trying to reach Earth, but then they're like, oh, well, we're never going to get there, and our ships are going to break down. It's like all of the problems that they had, they should have known how to resolve them. I mean, that's the best way that I can put it, because you had this ship going for over more than 100 years. How could you not know? Do you know what I mean? I mean, it was just, yeah, like sorely, sorely disappointed. I wish that I could take the author and say, go back and add 500 pages to this and let's see what you come up with. Because she had some great ideas in here, okay? And as far as I know, Ness Brown is a female. It's just such great ideas. So fantastic, but just, it was almost like too tied up in, oh, you know, well, we've got a xenomorph. Does that sound familiar? And, you know, they want to take over the ship. They want to kill all of us. Does that sound familiar? And then, you know, like I said, the android that they don't trust. Does that sound, you know, it was just too much of it. It was too much. And of course, strong female character. Oh, I don't even know how to say it. Yeah, I'm just sorely disappointed in the book. Yeah, that's it. Okay, on to the next one. All right, next one. Next one is Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. And I didn't enjoy this book. So, I mean, I read the whole thing. It was only 111 pages. My feeling is it was just too much of like a fairy tale. I did not feel like I was not the target audience for this at all. It felt a little bit like taking Rapunzel, turning it on its head, making Rapunzel young and evil, and then this toadling who was a human who's not like, it was a no for me. I don't even know what else to say. Yeah. It kind of makes me puts me off. Do I really want to read any more from T. Kingfisher? And you know, it's interesting because I have another one that I know is middle grade. A Wizard's Defensive Baking, I think it's called, or something like that. And I have it in my my Buzzword reading challenge, but it's a full novel. It's not a novella, and you know, the back of it just sounds like it's a bit more readable and a little less of a fairy tale. So I'm hoping that one's a little bit better. I haven't read any of her other work, so I don't have anything to compare it to. That's why I will definitely, I mean, it hasn't put me off completely. I do also have something else by her that I think is a bit more dark, so let's see how it goes. This I did not like. Okay, so next one. Okay, now we're getting into meat and potatoes here, because these ones are the larger books that I read. So the next one up is Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. And I really enjoyed this. It right from the very beginning. So right in your first chapter, when you're introduced to Selena, your main character, you know this is going to be a wild ride, okay? Because there's tension and there's action and bad things happen, and and then literally right from there, you're plunked into where Selena is told, you need to go, I need to find this guy, I need to kill him. Okay, so it slows down a tiny little bit, kind of in the point where she's trying to work her way into his fold, so to speak, and him and all of the other guys, they're all vampires, okay? But their relationship and how it evolves and the things she ends up doing to try to not see him or any of the other people that she is slowly becoming friends with get hurt. Yeah, it's quite an enjoyable read. Even right down to, like, there is a little bit of sexual content. I mean, I would say, like, maybe it's a 1 or 2 chili. It's not even all that much, and it's quite a bit later into the book that you get to that point in their relationship, but it's just how it all develops from there. I loved how that really worked. Now, I honestly did not see the ending coming, how her superior, the involvement there, the thing that kind of threw me, and I would say that this is a little bit spoilery, okay, is at the end, I could not understand the motivation for the superior, like Sight Mother she's called, why they allowed the people of their world, like where they were in their world, to live the way they did. Like how they were treated, how poor the situation was. Like, it was pretty bad. And they were basically, it was like warlords who just treated everybody like crap, kept them on drugs. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened, and I never understood, even down to the end, of why they did that. And the thing is that it was hidden from everybody. Like, nobody knew until it got right down to that final scene where they went in to kill this really bad guy. There was her and Atreus, the vampire. The two of them were there to kill this guy, and there's this Sight Mother's there, and I'm like, what is, like, I did not understand that. So that was the one thing that kind of threw me a little bit. I mean, of course, they overcame what she did, but it was pretty rough. Now this, I would be very curious to know, because I have not read any of the other books from the Crowns of Nyaxia. Does this occur before the other books in the Crowns of Nyaxia, or does this occur after the other books of the Crowns of Nyaxia? Because it's hard to tell. Like, I don't really know where in the order this sits. Okay, and I'd really like to know, like, how, because this might have been written after some of them, but it was meant to be a prequel to them, because it kind of felt like a prequel to me, but I wasn't really sure. So I'd really love to know if anybody knows the answer to that question. I'd love it if you could leave it in my comments, because I do have another series of hers that is part of the Crowns of Naxia that I do intend to read, but I'd be curious to know where this sits, because that just kind of gives me a better idea of what I'm going into with the other parts of the series. Anyways, so anyone can tell me that, that would be fantastic. All right. So the next one I read, I'll put it up here, is Break in the Dark by Lisa Jewell. Now, I read this as a arc from NetGalley, and it was an unedited arc, which didn't do it any favors. Okay, I had some major issues with the formatting, because it wasn't formatted to read correctly, and it had a lot of spelling and editing errors in it. But I could get the gist of the story. So it is the Marvel crime novel, and it is Jessica Jones. It's based on Jessica Jones, and she is, it's after her run as a superhero or something like that. So basically she is a drunk, and she's not doing great, and she's not managing everything very well in her life, and she has this business as an investigator, and not really a business. She's not doing really wonderful well that's concerned either. But this mother comes to her about her two children, saying that they came back from England and they're not normal, that they're not themselves, and she's willing to pay Jessica to investigate this. And so Jessica goes about investigating it. She follows Fox and Lark, who are the twins. It's a boy and a girl, and she ends up following them, and she sees the interaction with their friends and realizes there is something wrong. These kids are not acting normal, and because of that, she basically agrees to go to England to further investigate where the father lived, because mom and dad are divorced. Dad lives in England, mom lives here. So that's where Jessica goes. Now, what's happening through the book is at certain points you'll get to an end point, which is like almost the end of the chapter, and you get a excerpt in there that's a history, rolling history, something else, all entirely, that's happening. And we're talking like it starts 100 years back or more. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Honest to God, it probably took me until I was at least halfway through the book that I started seeing, okay, I'm saying in my head, this must have something to do with what happened with the kids, okay? Like there's got to be some relationship there between that backstory and these kids. But it was awful. I did not like the way it was formatted. I did not like the flow of it. Every single time something like that would come up, throw you right out of the story, and you're like, who are these people and what the hell are they doing? I mean, that's what I was going through my head. So I didn't like that part. The other thing that I had some major issues with how the whole thing developed. It was like basically a social commentary on the effects of social media, which I thought was interesting. But the story was just, yeah, I couldn't buy it. I thought it was ridiculous. And I would never read another Marvel crime novel again. I'm like, you know, that was just a bit, yeah, it was a bit much. And this was not a good introduction. I've never read one of Lisa Jewell's novels before. I do have one, but it is not, obviously. It's just a normal, one of her regular crime novels. So I'm hoping it's going to be better. And of course, it's a finished book. This was not a finished book. So I do give it a little because it wasn't the final edit. And I mean, it's like I'm almost curious to know what the final edit was. Almost enough to think, should I get it? So it's like, maybe no, I don't know. If it comes available on Kindle Unlimited, would I grab it? I don't know, you know, because now I'm curious. Now I want to know. So I suppose that's not a bad thing, right? But I'd really like to know how the final book flowed. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that I'm curious is because I'm a writer, you know, and I know the editing process that my books go through, and I know that without a doubt I would not want my current book that's not fully edited yet to be read by just anybody. It would not go in as an ARC. Okay, but this is from a large publisher, a little bit different. Anyway, yeah, I am curious, I have to admit. All right, so we've only got 2 more to go. So let's get on with this one. This one is a good one. Okay. So this one is the Book of Blood and Fire. So The Fall, which we did right at the beginning, was the prequel to this story. This is the Bound and the Broken, book 1, and it was 521 pages. I loved this book. I truly, really did love this book. How do I even describe it? So it's an epic fantasy, and it just had such wonderful character development in it. But then it also had a ton of action. And it also introduced a ton of morally gray characters, okay? Now, the main character is Callie, and he is not morally gray, okay? He's a good guy. Very, very, very sweet young man. And how he changes as the story develops is hard to go through, because he has a lot of things happen to him that are hard for him, but him and his 2 friends, they're his family, basically. They end up with they're very close, and I thoroughly loved it. Now, some of the things that happen, of course, in the prequel lay the foundations for how this world works, who the Dragon Guard are, and how everyone's afraid of them. Like, you don't want to piss them off or anything like that. And I like how he has taken the unusual characters of the world and given them all a very solid foundation, you know, like where they came from, why they are how they are, is all as a result of everything that happened. That's why I said you have to read the prequel. It's super important. Even right down to his brother who died young. Now, the very first chapter opens with what has obviously been a battle, and the characters that show up are characters that are from a warrior group that were in the prequel. And they find one young man still alive. I have my suspicions on who that is. But what bothered me is that that's never mentioned again in the book. So it's like you're sitting here and going, well, what the hell? Right? So that was the only thing that I think kind of threw me a little bit, because I'm like, well, what was the point of that first chapter? And then I'm like, oh, I think I know why. Because it's like, you know, that's going to have some significance. And it, you know, it's building to a bigger battle and a bigger battle and a bigger battle. And that's where it ends. Okay. It ends at the point where it, like, almost full on war is going to happen. And that's it. It ends. So it's like, you know, you got to read the next one. Right. So I actually did check. And where did I write it? I wrote it here somewhere. Oh, did I write it on here? I thought I wrote it on here. No, I can't find it. So I think that there are 4 full-length novels now. I think the 4th one just came out. And there are 3 novellas. And when I looked at the synopsis on the novellas, I think the novellas are all characters that appear in the books. So it gives some back history on the characters that appear in the books. And I think he's numbered them in such a way that, like, say, you know, this would be, the first one was 0.5. So that's the first novella. So you know that comes before 1, obviously. And then, you know, like the next one might be 1.5. And then the next one might be 3.5, like that kind of thing. So he numbers them so that you know where they are in the sequence. And I will definitely read the novellas, because obviously what I got out of that first novella was quite a lot. And it, in the sense that I knew why everything was happening the way it was, and understood it a little bit more, and understood the significance of the dragon's egg, which is a bit of a spoiler. I won't tell you anything more about that. But there is a huge significance, and that stems from what happens in the novella and flows into this book, which is super, super important. So I truly, I loved the book. Like, I love the book. Don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I love the book. Okay. So, okay. And the last book I read is Quicksilver. So Quicksilver and Round and the Broken, of Blood and Fire. These 2 books are the 2 books that were on Kindle Unlimited. Okay. And they are the 2 books that I decided I want to read in paperback. Totally glad I did, because they're fantastic books, but very, very hard to read for me in digital format, because there's just they're so complex, I think is a good way of putting it. Okay, so this one, I enjoyed this book, but I'm going to read my full review. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read my full review, because I think this really says a lot. Okay? All right, so I'm going to leave out the first sentence. So, it was a wild ride with fae, vampires, gods, immortals, witches, and the kitchen sink. Overall, I enjoyed the book, but that is likely because I liked the characters. I liked all of them, from the main characters to the secondary characters, and it really helped me get me through the book. I rooted for them, even Saris and Fisher, who is Kingfisher, but they refer to him as Fisher through the book. Ian Fisher, as they became closer. I had heard many people say that their relationship was 1 minute I hate you, next minute I love you. But I never felt that. I honestly did not feel that through the book. I did find that the sexual content, when it came, which was much later, okay, that the first instance of the sexual contact did not feel natural. But later on, it was fine. So it was like that first one was kind of a jolt that pulled me out of the story a little bit. I was like, okay, and then after that, it was like, oh yeah, okay, totally fine. Right? Okay. I do find that if a story has strong characters, I can forgive a lot in the plot. The biggest issues with this book was that it had too many things going on at once. It felt like the author picked up every single plot or trope, threw it at a wall to see what would stick. When I said this book contained the kitchen sink, I wasn't kidding. So this is where I'm going to get into the details. So this is very spoilery, okay? 100%. If you don't want to hear this, skip over this part of the video. Maybe I'll put time stamps in at the in the bottom so you can skip over it, but I would skip over this part of the video. So they were Fae first. Oh, and they had sharp teeth because they used to drink blood. But you know, they were cured and don't do that anymore. And of course, then we had feeders, which were because of a vampire. Oh, did I mention that? Well, then we have the Quicksilver that can talk to Ceres. Yep, weird, but okay, kind of went with the story, right? Then we have witches who all of a sudden can cure the bite of a vampire, which is supposed to be incurable. But don't forget that they were the ones that cursed the Fae and turned them into vampires. Wait, no, they didn't. They were the ones, no, wait, what did I say? Wait, no, they didn't. They were the ones that apparently cured them. But you know, we'll just throw that out there and leave it at that. And then, just to put the cherry on the top, Ceres went and visited some god out in the middle of nowhere during a fight against the nasty rulers that we've now realized were related. Are you confused yet? I sure as hell was. One thing I can say about this book, so this is the point where I'm going to say, you either got to hear it, listen to the audiobook, or read the book. Do not skim. Okay? One thing I can say is that if you are a skimmer, skip this book because you'll have a lot of trouble following the story. You have to pay attention to everything. I guess you can say that I'm not a skimmer because I did enjoy the book, putting all of that aside. And let me tell you, the final line in the book from Fisher, so this is really spoilery, okay? And I quote, and this is while he opens a window and he points out and he says, tell them that as far as the vampire court is concerned, you're to be coronated. In 2 days' time, you officially become the new queen of Sansaroth. That pretty much guaranteed that I'll be reading the next book in the series because holy damn, but wait, aren't they a bunch of feeders? God, I'm still confused. So that was my review. Now, I loved the book, but there were so many things thrown at you all at once, okay? So what I'm hoping is that with the next book, because all of the foundation has been laid in this book, that you're going to get a more natural flow to the story. I mean, about the only thing that isn't in this book is shifters. So that's about the only thing she didn't throw in this book. Because everything else known to Fantasyland is in this book. Okay? So that's the only thing, extra thing she could throw into the book. I mean, yeah, there's lots of other types of magic you can throw into the book, but that's something that you would expect in a fantasy book that could come up here and there. But, wow. It just was like, yeah, it was a good book. I did really like it. Yeah, I would say that, you know, I wouldn't say that it was my favorite book of the, I would say this and this sit equal for me in how I felt about them once I finished them. okay? That left me satisfied. I enjoyed the book, and I'd like to read on. So in this case, of course, this was a standalone, but it's part of the Crimson Axia world, so I would like to read more. And this one here, I would definitely will get the next book in the series and follow that. So, you know, I did enjoy those, but I would say that my best books of the year, I mean of the month, the year, right, we're only in January. It's like, get with the program there, Judy. So my two favorites were these two. Okay, so they sat the highest in my ratings, and I enjoyed them the most. And obviously, it couldn't be more different. I mean, this is a romantic suspense, and this is an epic fantasy. But in both cases, it's like I can't wait to go on to the next book in the series. And this made me love epic fantasy because it was kind of really on the fence about how I felt about epic fantasy. You know, it's not a genre that I've read a lot of. Actually, probably not much of any. Most of what I've tried for fantasy have been more romantic fantasy or like dystopian type fantasy. So this just really hit the mark for me, and I loved every bit of it. So I love it for that reason. And then this is just, I loved it because I love this woman's writing so much, and you know, and how she builds the characters and how she interweaves the characters, and just, yeah, fantastic romantic suspense. So that's everything for me. I don't have anything else to say. Those were my January reads. I think it was a really successful month. You know, I had the one DNF, and I did have some disappointments, but I had so many great books that I read that it just really made up for anything that was disappointing. And I mean, you know, you can't love everything. That's just reality. And my way of looking at it is I want to read so many different things, but I know I'm not going to just absolutely love all of them. I mean, I wouldn't be normal if I loved all of them. It's like, you know, some of them are just really not gonna hit the mark. And, you know, in this particular case, there were a few that didn't really, but, you know, that doesn't even put me off the authors. For me, nothing like that puts me off because every book is different and how they write it is different. So I like to think on a positive manner and from a positive point of view. So that's it for me. Now, I think one of the things I'm going to do next, because I've got February to fill up a little bit, I am going to bring a rather interesting video. I think my next video is, I was thinking of doing a featured author, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to feature a book topic. And this is not something that is a book we read, but it's a book that's very, very, very close to my heart. And that is cookbooks, in particular books, baking books. But I have a huge collection. Well, you know, not a huge collection, but I have a good sized collection, and I'm going to share those. I'd love to share those, and I'd love to share why I like them and what I love in them. So I'm going to plan that for my next video. I know it's going to be probably the kind of video that doesn't appeal to a lot of people, but I'm hoping that anybody who likes to bake or cook is going to just watch to see what books I have, and maybe they'll find something that they're interested in. Anyways, that's it. I'm done. That was a long video. It's always a long video, especially when I have to do reviews, because I got so much I have to say. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to go, and I will see you next week.